Oh yeah, I saw this video. I want to watch this video too. It's called Embrace Roleplaying, by Pretzel. Yeah, if you haven't seen this guy, check him out. Seems like a good video. I haven't watched it yet, so I want to see.
How do you play Skyrim? Do you really focus in on a character? Like, you sit down, think of a backstory, plan out the weapons you'll use, establish your character's moral foundation, so you know how to act during big story choices.
No, absolutely not.
Or do you do a little bit of everything? Throwing fireballs, swinging your sword, shooting arrows, picking the stereotypical good guy choices in quests. Go with the flow, you know?
I think, before we get in too far, I'm gonna put like kind of a preface. I think most people, it's like a middle ground. You know, they're not into a character, but they're also not, they're not playing a character. They're not playing a character. So, I mean, for me personally, I know with a few people, when you're playing a game, you kind of have a power fantasy. You want to just be OP and just murk everything. Or sometimes you want to be really, really, really good, and, you know, you take all the hits or heal people or whatever. But, I mean, you don't, you're not method acting. I mean, you don't become the character, you're not LARPing. So you're playing a character, but you're not becoming the character, if it makes sense. You know, like, you're playing a certain character, but you're not actually becoming, you're not actually embodying that character. I think that's what it's going to come down to for most people.
Before we dive into all that, let's get fundamental real quick.
Right.
Why do we play video games?
To have fun.
In my mind, it's because we desire stimulation. We want to do things and have the game react to us. Those interactions between us pushing buttons and the game responding to those buttons, that's what makes video games distinct from all the non-interactive mediums.
Yeah.
Restrictions in the game add more meaningful stimulation. Think of it like this. If all a level in Super Mario Bros. was just a flat plane until the flagpole, there's no meat on the game's bones. You just hold right and eventually win.
Yeah.
There's nothing to put a little pressure on you. The pressure put onto the player is an important value that a designer can tweak. Do they add just a couple more enemies to make it slightly more challenging? Or do they ease up and let the player breathe a bit? There's a fine line to be struck between putting too much or not enough pressure on the player. And I think games these days lean away from putting too much pressure on the player. Skyrim doesn't really care to limit you. You can use any weapon type on any character, level up all your skills to 100, do almost every quest in the game on one save. You can truly become a jack of all trades.
I think there is some exceptions.
But I think the game would be more meaningful if you could choose some restrictions. Forbid your character from equipping a certain weapon type. Make them incredibly weak to one magic school. Have them be weaker during the day. That kind of thing. Having constraints like that puts...
It's kind of like WoW. WoW's kind of like that. It has some more distinction.
At the end of a dungeon,
kind of like he's
you
talking.
find a boss using a magic style you're especially weak to. So you have to drink some resistance potions to make sure you don't die in one hit. Maybe you come across a random event midday, but you're weak during the day. So you have to decide to fight some thieves coming at you or run away.
Like a vampire.
The fact that you have to think and actually do something.
Restrictions. You know, benefits and restrictions and stuff like that.
That's a more meaningful interaction. But Skyrim isn't that game. You don't really need to worry about the time of day or what weapon type the enemy is using. Just be stocked up on restoration potions and you're ready to go. And sure, you could argue that while the game doesn't have any mechanical system to impose restrictions, you could still do it yourself. You could choose to not pick up and use any axe if you really wanted to.
You can do that with pretty much any game.
These are called role-playing games. I would hope the game would give you some system to impose a role.
To a degree, with every game, you can do that.
Some games will offer restrictions, but have it be a completely optional thing. Ghost Recon Breakpoint is a game that really leans into the optional difficulty thing. For those not familiar, it's a typical Ubisoft game. An overwhelming HUD, a map full of collectibles,
so bullshit.
You know what to expect.
Yeah.
Post-release,
bullshit.
though, they put out an update.
And why did that look so garbage?
Objective. soft game. An overwhelming HUD.
Look
map
at the
full of amazing
truck!
Collectibles, quest objectives.
Like, I know it's quite a bit of an older game, but like,
Is
what
you know what to
is
expect.
that, dude?
Post-release, though, they
That
put
looks
out
like
an update
one of my
that
Lego
added a ton
sets
of little toggles to make the game slightly
from
more challenging. Make it so you lose
7
ammo
years
on
ago.
partial reload, take limb injuries more
Probably
often,
longer.
eliminate natural health regeneration. These are all things that make the game objectively harder.
Okay.
But you know what? It makes the game more meaningful. You have more things to think about during an encounter, so you aren't just mindlessly shooting all the bad guys as they come into sight. You have to
But that's
prepare
fun.
supplies beforehand, really scout out the enemy camp and plan your route of attack. You gotta put effort in. And to reiterate,
Well, that's not
all
fun.
of those are options. Hell, they aren't even incentivized. It's not like you get more XP if you play with a bunch of the difficulty settings cranked up. This screen comes up and it basically asks you, what game would you like to play? Would you like to be pressured
Did
at
it
every
just-
moment? Or would you prefer to breathe if you play with a...
Regular experience. Gear level 211, rarity blue.
bunch of the difficulty settings cranked up?
Oh, okay. Probably because everything does a set amount of
This
damage
screen
or some
comes up
shit.
and it
Okay,
basically asks
whatever.
you, what game would you like to play? Would you like to be pressured at every moment? Or would you prefer to breeze through the game? Both are equally valid.
Right.
I kinda dig that. It lets players who are really hardcore tailor the experience to exactly what they want. They can flip on and off every little setting to perfectly create the game that fits them.
That's crazy. I didn't know they had all
For
this.
people who don't care and just want to be along for the ride, they don't have to think about it too much. It's a win-win.
Dropped.
Right? I kind of go back and forth on this, but I think forcing the player to be a bit more restricted helps out in the long run. A lot of players will
Okay.
just instinctively take the path of least resistance. Turn on all objective markers, give me infinite stamina, quick health regen. Just take out all those barriers that distract me from the core gameplay loop. To go
Yes
back to
and
what I said
no, right?
earlier, you could just
don't wanna
choose not to
feel
use
like you're
actions
cheating
as
the whole
timer.
time.
Maybe
It's not
your
fun.
character had a bad experience with one as a kid, and they vowed to never use one again. So you go through the game using long swords. But then, a really cool axe drops. It does a ton of damage and has a cool enchantment. What's the likelihood that you're gonna refuse that drop and continue using your weaker sword? I think a lot of players would enjoy games more if they were pressured a tiny bit. Make it so they literally cannot equip that nice new axe. Have enemy types that force you to use weapons you wouldn't normally. Dish out some consequences for a bad decision. It's really hard to force the majority of players to stick to a self-imposed challenge. Daggerfall found
Yeah.
a really cool solution to this. I think all the Elder Scrolls games could have learned from it here. That game has an in-depth character creator, but what I want to focus on is right here. This is where you pick special advantages and disadvantages.
Skill advancement
Every
for
advantage
class.
you take raises this pointer, which means you'll level up more slowly throughout the game.
Okay.
Every disadvantage you take lowers the pointer, which means you'll level up more quickly. I'm generally not one to limit or restrict myself in games, yet I can't
Okay.
help myself but pick some while making a character here. I know that if I take a pretty hefty disadvantage, I can get a nice advantage in return. I want to be stronger with a longsword when I start the game, so I pick expertise in longblade. But then that makes me level up slower, so I give myself weakness to poison to balance it out. I can
Okay.
keep adding advantages and disadvantages until I have a character that is wholly mine. They have
Wow.
a specific set of traits.
I've never
that will
seen this
govern
game.
How I go through the game going forward. You can lead a horse to water, but unfortunately, you can't force it to drink.
No.
I will add those advantages and disadvantages to
You
my
can try
character.
giving it a lot of salt.
My character is super unique, and my playstyle is different every time because of that.
That's what they do to monkeys. People in Africa, I heard this. People in Africa, what they do is they like tie up salt somewhere or whatever, and they'll have it like in a they put it in a hole, and then a monkey will come and try to grab the salt, and he's got water on his hands or whatever, like the sweat of his hands, and his hands like swell up, and he can't take his hand out, so he gets stuck there, and the dude gives him salt. Because he caught the monkey, so he gives him salt. He's like, here's some salt. Because that's what he really likes. and they eat all the salt, and he gets super fucking dehydrated, and the monkey's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna go to the water now. See ya. He dips out, and the dude just fucking follows him with a rope around his neck. He's like, alright, now I found some water, and now we both drink it. So, yeah, I mean, give the horse some salt. It might drink.
But I never roleplay. I never want to think about my character's backstory. I very rarely put myself in the head of them and make decisions in quests based on what they would do.
Yeah.
If I know of a cool method to make a bunch of money, but it'll be looked down upon morally, I won't stop my good guy character from doing it. Are any of you guys like that?
Nah.
I kinda wish I wasn't,
Fuck
because
that.
I acknowledge I would probably have a deeper connection with the game. I would be forced to specialize.
Steal everything.
Rather than being a jack of all trades.
Get all the
whatever
money.
the hell he wants.
Kill him.
I've tried before to really
What's
get
the point?
into that mindset, and it's hard. It's hard to force that on someone who
Yeah,
doesn't
just stab
really
him.
want to
It's
for
fine.
themselves.
Why is there a
I'm sure
robot?
lot
Is that a
of you out
robot?
there are the same way. You didn't think about the crimes your character committed before they were captured at the beginning of Skyrim.
No.
Their
Nobody
goals,
does.
Their motivations, most of you probably didn't.
You're just trying to live because there's a
If
dragon.
you did, you would probably have a stronger relationship with the game. Why
Probably.
is that? Why do a lot of
Maybe.
people not roleplay? I say a lot of people, and not everyone, because there are a good few gamers out there who do that.
Ha,
Dungeons
doodoo.
and Dragons has been
But
around
yeah.
forever, and that's built
Very
from the
true.
ground up for role-playing. I haven't played it myself, but I assume
neither.
you can't just make a jack of all trades like you can in Skyrim. Or if you try to, you'll severely handicap yourself and be unable to do anything. Those games have been doing it since the 70s. Why can't I follow
Yeah, I don't know
their
how that
footsteps?
works because it's all like
I think the
up in the
medium
head,
itself plays a
so
part in that. You have to imagine a lot more stuff
I don't
in your
know.
mind when playing tabletop compared to a video game. When going into a Skyrim
Sometimes
dungeon,
those
you
games
can
go on
walk
for a
around
very
and smack enemies
pause.
to your
What?
heart's
Anyway, sometimes those games go on for a very long time, so maybe like, you know, you have a 10-year-long game and eventually you have a character who's like good at everything, but other than that, I don't know how it would work.
floor. You
Not
feel
sure.
the mechanical intensity as you swing your sword and it cuts through an enemy. Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have that. You roll the dice and that determines how combat goes. Then it's up to the dungeon master
Yeah.
to tell you how that interaction went. And they use their imagination to do that. It's a
Yeah.
lot like the relationship of books and movies. Movies can visually show off things that could only be imagined with text on a page. Video games have kind of got us complacent when it comes to using our imagination.
Is that
If
God
you have a
weapon?
super
I think it
casual
is.
gamer who loves Skyrim, and then you try to introduce them
Yeah,
to
I'm pretty sure
Pillars
it
of
is.
Eternity, they're gonna have a hard time adjusting.
Played a bunch of Skyrim. I was obsessed.
So much of the beauty of that game is the
Probably like a
prose
couple
and the way
months.
it evokes imagery in your mind. And that only works because the game looks like this. If it were more detailed and you could see everything up close yourself, then the magic that comes from imagining things would be lost.
Sure.
Skyrim is more popular than Pillars of Eternity, though. People want
Yeah,
things spelled
absolutely.
out for them. Not even spelled out for them, shown off, shown in beautiful, stunning detail. Trying to get players to read paragraphs of text describing an
Yeah, I don't want to read that
environment,
shit.
or role-playing a game that's clearly not built for it? It's
Just
a
why
Sisyphean
why would I
task.
read when I could
You're
walk
not
around
only fighting
and
against
stab
their past
people?
Biases, you're fighting against biases from other games they might be playing at the time.
True.
I'm not sure how to describe this, but I think you have to cognitively raise your mind up a level when role-playing in a game. We're so used to engaging with games
What you mean?
superficially. A quest prompts us with a choice, and we think, what would I do in this situation? As if
No.
you were the character you're playing as. It's not an unreasonable perspective to have, considering these games are often first person. But to roleplay, you have to push that to the side. You have to not care
Wait,
about
what?
what you personally would do, but what your character would do.
Oh, okay.
You know that you would pick the
That makes
dialogue
sense.
to help the most people and be the best guy in all of Skyrim. But maybe your character is only out for themselves. Maybe they pick the choice that screws over a few people for a tiny little reward. Not even a big enough reward to make it worth your while mechanically to pick it. Maybe your character truly
I love playing
doesn't
as a
care that
vampire.
the Whiterun orphanage is on fire, and would rather pick up 10 gold pieces he sees on the ground instead of helping them. Personally, I don't vibe with it. I think it just comes down to the fact that that's not what I want out of a game.
Yeah.
I kinda wish I did want that though. I wish I was able to really immerse myself in these game worlds and truly become the character I'm playing as. But as I am right now, I just kind of use the character as a vessel for me and my personality to experience the world. I don't want to impose a whole lot of restrictions on myself. I just want to see all the content the developers created. Though, going forward, I want to at least be a bit more intentional when I play my games. I'm probably never going to write down my own backstory in a physical notebook and plan out everything beforehand, but I at least want to be more deliberate about the things I do. Maybe I don't need to steal everything from the merchant chest hidden in Dawnstar. Just because it's there doesn't mean I need to do it. Even if you're like me
True.
and don't want to go all in on role-playing, at least think of some guiding principles that can lead you through the game. Just one or
But
two
why
things
not?
specific to this character and this playthrough that restrict you. A couple barriers to give your playthrough some texture. If you're open to it though, I say go all in on role-playing. Let your character exist and make their own decisions. Imagine you're
Okay.
a third-party observer just watching them go about their day. Let them be
That's-
your guide throughout the game. Thanks for watching.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Having having the perspective of it being basically a movie that you're watching take place, or at least attempting to kind of frame it like that in your mind. I think that's a very interesting way to think about it, and I don't think enough people do it. Although I know why they don't, because it takes so much more mental effort, and the point of playing the game, and why 95% of people in the entire world play video games, is because they don't want to use their brain. They want to shut off their brain. They want to escape reality. They just want to do what they want to do, and have fun, feel overpowered or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, it could be fun, you know, on the weekend, you invite a friend over, whatever, like a couple boys over, you go through a game, and, you know, I don't know what game would be good for it, but, you know, I'm sure there's a few, like Fallout or whatever, and you guys can play different roles or do whatever. I think that could be very fun. Could be very interesting, too. There's one more game, or one more video here.